Hello, my name is Dara Schniederjans, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to the Work Digitalization and Sustainability Symposium. I'm very sorry I couldn't be there due to a family emergency. I unfortunately had to divert travel back to Nebraska. So this is very unfortunate, but hope that this suffices in consideration. Just a little bit about myself. I am a professor of supply chain management at the URI's College of Business in their emerging business analytics and artificial intelligence area. I'm also the associate dean of graduate programs and research and also their director of their MS in supply chain and applied analytics program. So, in my roles as professor and as associate dean, I am consistently looking for opportunities to bridge connections to different institutions and being well aware of the great work that comes out of University of Hohenheim and Germany as a country. I couldn't pass up this opportunity. So, I'm just sorry I couldn't be there in person. Regardless, and in light of the symposium aim, however, this presentation is based on a consistent issue that is being talked about not only in academia but also in industry. And I will discuss some of URI's work in this area as well as expand upon some of the future research opportunities. So, in supply chain management research, there is an increasing pressure to not only make our research more theoretically relevant, but also industry relevant. So, one of the ways in which I do this is to attend industry conferences, including ASCM and CSCMP, but also corporate webinars. This is one such webinar where a group of chief operating officers were surveyed and asked as they think about their business strategy over the next 3 to 5 years. What is their highest strategic priority? And by far, almost 80% of respondents indicating embedding new technologies in an existing business model and enabling new revenue streams or channels were the two main priorities in the next 3 to 5 years. And although all of these were important, items like managing operational costs, investing in workforce retention and upskilling, and resiliency were not as emphasized. Now, following up with that, the panel consisting of 4 chief operating officers discussed several items fundamental to enhancing an outcomes-obsessed culture, including things like doubling down on data analytics investments, being clear on organizational value propositions, understanding not only the competency of your team members, but also making sure that those team members are empowered to make changes from the bottom up through important change management strategies, as well as upskilling were discussed. Regardless, what was still emphasized by the majority of the COO surveys was the embedment of technologies and rapid enablement of new revenue streams or channels. So what this tells me going forward is that in the next 3 to 5 years, there is likely to be corporate strategic imperatives towards adoption and enablement of autonomous processes coupled with new initiatives for additional revenue streams. But there seems to be less emphasis on workforce retention and upskilling, despite all of the talk that's happening regarding the importance of retention and upskilling employees. Additionally, higher education institutions are rapidly trying to adjust to a growing technology-driven environment. And this includes things like enhancing technology, enhanced learning, collaborative projects, including Lean Six Sigma projects within the industries, enhancing soft skills of students, development and preparing students to make lifelong responsible decisions in environments that are rapidly going towards lights out industry. But we are nowhere near where we need to be. We're even seeing a shift of focus from Industry 4.0 to Industry 5.0, which discusses more of the human and sustainability efforts of increased digital capacity, where we focus not only on profit maximization, but also in efficiency maximization, but also on the betterment of society, and environmental sustainability, and so on. And this is seemingly the next logical step in the sequence. But before we can really understand this evolvement, we have to take a step backward to understand the current situation and where we're headed. And one of the ways in which to do this is to identify common issues in the current environment. So one of the issues that keeps popping up, not only in these industry conferences, but also elsewhere, is the sheer amount of data and information available to help aid decisions, but overall, a limited understanding of how to turn this data and information into actionable strategic initiatives to drive and maximize value, not only through enhanced profitability, but also enhanced corporate culture. And it would seem that if you look at Industry 4.0 as this rapid decentralization of information sharing and decision making with the ability to collect, share, and use information to make better decisions, and then also where you have distributed intelligence and control with IoT, cloud technology, things like automating complex tasks across machines and factories and remote access to those factories, it would seem that the sheer definition of Industry 4.0 precludes a decrease in information asymmetry. And due to a large extent, this is true. For example, in the post-Industry 4.0 era, you have things like ubiquitous access to information with the advent of cloud computing and digital collaboration tools. This has really democratized information access for individuals, where employees at all levels can access real-time data and insights, reducing information asymmetry within the organization. You also have rapid and efficient communication with advanced communication tools. Information is now disseminated rapidly and more efficiently, which facilitates quicker decision-making and reduces the gap in information dissemination. Then you also have data-driven insights in AI, which allows for the use of big data analytics and AI to enhance decision-making with real-time data, guiding business strategies and reducing reliance on intuition or asymmetric information. And automation and accuracy, which reduces the scope for human error. You also have enhanced external information exchange, where digital platforms enable faster and more transparent exchange of information with external stakeholders, allowing companies to be more responsive to market changes, regulatory environments, and consumer preferences. On the other end of the spectrum, you also have downsides. This includes greater risk of information overload. So while access to information has improved, there is also the risk of information overload, where the sheer volume of data available can be overwhelming and counterproductive if not managed effectively. You also have cybersecurity concern with increased digitalization, and the risk of cyber threats has really escalated. So protecting that sensitive information from unauthorized access has become a critical concern going forward. Additionally, you have evolving skill requirements of employees. This demands new skill sets from employees, including data literacy and digital competency, to navigate and utilize this abundant information to create value. But also cultural and organizational changes. As mentioned previously, change management will become a huge imperative going forward. Organizations have to adapt their cultures and structures to accommodate more horizontal information flows and collaborative work environments. So there are both pros and cons, we believe. That being said, there might be a shift in how we understand information asymmetry. So if you look at the economic definition of information asymmetry from Akerlof, who defines it as a condition where one party has a larger amount of higher quality information than another, we believe that there is likely to be a shift in how information asymmetry is experienced. So one of my favorite examples of information asymmetry is from Akerlof discussing the used car dealership, where you have a lemon car, which is basically a worthless car next to nothing in terms of value. And then you have a plum car that's higher quality. So these are two different types of cars that can be sold. Now, in a traditional environment, the seller would have perfect information in regards to the valuation of each type of car, whereas the buyer would not. A seller would sell assuming the price is greater than or equal to the value, and the buyer would buy if the price is less than or equal to the perceived value. Unfortunately, since the buyer does not have perfect information and information asymmetry exists, the buyer will likely purchase the lemon car with a valuation somewhere between the lemon and the plum. And this causes two different types of market failures, including an increase in the number of lemon cars in the market, if those are the cars that are most sold, as well as an eventual distrust with the buyers in the market, with the dealers selling those cars. So potentially leading to declined sales. So those are two different types of market failures caused by information asymmetry. Now, with increased technologies and things like third-party evaluations that are made available real time to consumers, this decreases the information asymmetry gap between buyer and seller from a human-to-human context, allowing for more informed consumers over time. However, we also need to keep in mind that we have an increased human-to-computer interaction, which may or may not shift information asymmetry between the traditional human-to-human buyer and seller to human and computer information asymmetry. There are also various conceptualizations of information asymmetry that continue to be proliferated and adjusted over time. One example is Berg's information asymmetry conceptualization, which defined 5 types of information asymmetry, all of which can be impacted by this change in dynamics from human to human interaction to more human to computer interaction. So Berg defines private information where one party has access to privileged private information. The information can be proprietary, legally protected, or arise from specialized assets or expertise. Those parties with access to this information can use it as a source of competitive advantage with a better understanding of their resources than competitors. So similar to that used car salesman information. Different information refers to when different people know different things, where information is not homogeneously distributed in the market, nor is access to that relevant information. Hidden information refers to actions from one party to purposefully conceal information. This is also connected to moral hazard that arises when it's difficult or costly to monitor an agent's efforts, and thus poses an incentive for the agent to provide lower quality. Lack of perfect information refers to when one party is not having perfect information that may be incomplete or asymmetrically distributed amongst partners. Signaling theory has been leveraged in assessing these conceptualizations of information asymmetry. However, there's also information impactedness, which brings on transaction cost economics. Williamson in the 70s conceptualized it as leading to transaction cost. So the shift from human to human information asymmetry to human to computer is one conjecture, but it is worth analyzing how the adjustments toward autonomous control may impact information asymmetry, both holistically as well as on a dimensional level going forward. So one of the ways in which we are contributing at the University of Rhode Island is to help assess what are the necessary conditions for information asymmetry in an interorganizational context, both from digital and non-digital contexts. So this is a study from one of our PhD students, Sadiv Vayazinejad, who is conducting a 3-part study with literature, exploratory interviews, and finally best worst scenarios in order to prioritize factors and select causal conditions. We have today some initial insights from the literature's search and some initial findings. The first step, and I do highly recommend this book if you're interested in analyzing necessary conditions. This is a book from Jan Duhl. I don't know Jan Duhl personally, but I enjoy his work, and it's a really easy read and may give you further insights into this particular method and identifying necessary conditions, as well as future research ideas. Anyway, the first step was identifying and classifying necessary conditions based on this. So we conducted semi-structured literature review on information asymmetry. We defined a buyer-supplier context and coded to identify antecedent factors of necessary conditions for information asymmetry, utilizing words representing specifically necessity, logic, enablers, and constraints. Then we obtained initial codes and categorized those codes based on context. We also broadly categorized based on both digital and non-digital environments. So the digital environments included any information shared via digital means. This could be platforms, P2P, IT, cloud. The non-digital environments also included any information shared via non-digital means, including human-to-human interaction, in-person negotiations, B2B negotiations, etc. So here is a basic overview of those frequencies. We had an almost 50-50 distribution on digital versus non-digital environments for ease of analysis. So that was nice. Several identified necessary conditions for information asymmetry included cognitive limits from bounded rationality, where parties have inherent limitations in processing and analyzing available information, potential deception, where there is a possibility that parties may withhold or distort information for personal gain, complex global supply chains, where there's increased complexity due to global trade, leading to greater potential for information gaps, cultural differences, where there's differences in cultural background, which can exacerbate information gaps and misunderstandings. Underspecified contracts, which are contracts that fail to capture all necessary details, leading to gaps in mutual understandings. And then task complexity, which is difficulty in developing complete contracts and monitoring mechanisms due to complex tasks. So deception was by far the most pronounced condition based on frequency, followed by task complexity, cultural differences, complex global networks, and underspecified contracts. And then last was cognitive limits. So if we look at the differences amongst the non-digital versus the digital environments, interestingly enough, we see quite a bit of information asymmetry necessary conditions being discussed amongst the non-digital categorized literature, including co-occurrences with cultural differences, deception, task complexity, complex networks, and underspecified contracts. We also see positive correlations with complex networks and non-digital environments. Within the digital environments, we actually only saw statistically significant co-occurrences with deception, potentially indicating that that is still a concern there. Again, these are preliminary findings, but we have a lot more work in terms of further analyzing these relationships through both interviews and BWS analyses to further understand the causal conditions, which is what we're primarily interested in. So going forward, that summarizes a little bit about our research, but keeping in mind that this area is wrought with potential ideas for future research and hopefully research that not only ignites value in concepts like Industry 4.0, but also places a greater emphasis on future-oriented topics related to Industry 5.0, which bridges ideation into not only enhancing profitability, but also the value of the greater good. In looking at information asymmetry, which is one of the topics discussed in the industry conferences that I mentioned, we provide an initial conjecture of the shift of information asymmetry between person to person and instead human to computer, but further analysis on how does information asymmetry gap adjust with, for example, corporate prioritization through rapid embedding of technologies versus employee upskilling or knowledge investment, may be a worthwhile concept to explore. Further analyzing its impact on company culture and value maximization, not only within the firm, but within the broader network, including consumer well-being, may also be important. If you look at it from the root cause analysis, you can also identify not only the necessary conditions, but the ways in which to reduce those conditions, as well as common problems, including information overload. Might be interesting. Finally, as we are all members of higher education institutions, it also behooves us to explore how we can adjust to the changing dynamics of things like smart factories and enhancing the marketability of our students, whether that be through certifications, customization of programs, etc. So we really all should be concerned about that going forward. Other areas of research and also other areas that our URI colleagues in AI have identified include more methodological insights on technologies, and particularly related to OpenAI. Some of our colleagues are identifying questions related to accounting for AI hallucinations and other pitfalls of technologies and mitigating these prior to occurrence. We are also seeing a growth in other topics, including things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. particularly in things like OpenAI, including how to make prompts more inclusive, as well as mitigating human over reliance on technology and promoting creative and critical reasoning. So again, these are just concepts going forward. I apologize again for not being able to make it to WDS. If you have any questions or would like to further connect, if you have any questions about research at URI, I'd be happy to answer those as well, or further connect you to my colleagues as well. I do hope to meet you all in the future, as these are wonderful and exciting areas to explore. Thank you for listening.